Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and today I'm going to be talking about Bakunin. Now, Nomads is a faction that has a very special place in my heart and quite a large space in my collection there, despite the fact that none of the models have ever seen the table. The reason for that is twofold. So Nomads has a special place in my heart because they were the faction that I saw being played when I saw my first ever game of Infinity, and I picked up the models, and that's part of what attracted me to Infinity as a whole. So I'm collecting the models. But the reason why they haven't seen the game table is I'm also quite afraid of Nomads. Not just facing them, sometimes that can be a bit tricky, but they come across to me as a faction that has so many different ways of being played that it's almost impossible to settle on the one that suits you or the units or the sectorial itself. That's why I was really happy to have received the Bakunin set from Corvus Belli, because I think it's going to be the tipping point for me to actually put Nomads units on the table. There's several things I love about this. Now, not just the set, but about Bakunin and the list building that I've experimented with so far. So in terms of this set, it's one of the classic Corvus Belli sectorial starters. It is a trap. It is a great way for them to go, here's most of what you need, buy these boxes, and before you know it, that 10 model limit that you need in Infinity has become 30 models. So here we've got the Bakunin starter set here, well, not a starter set, but the sectorial set, which has got a good number of minis, and surprisingly, because I've actually started to assemble them because I'm serious about putting them on the table, a Siocast S5. I believe it's S5 off the top of my head. I do have it here just to check that I'm not talking nonsense. S5, I know what I'm talking about, which is odd. This is the smallest Siocast I've seen from Corvus Belli, and this comes off the back of just doing the Unicool review, which if I remember I will link to up there so that you can see the difference between Unicool and Siocast. But it's interesting to be able to see it at this size, but I like the unit. I have also assembled a couple of the others there, so yeah, this box is empty because it's busy being assembled, but I am keen to get these on the table. One thing I do love about these sets is that the limited edition model, or at least the bonus convention model, the event exclusive, and then also the Dire Foe set are all usable elements. Now the Robin Hook, I don't know that I'm going to be playing that as often as I might Mother Healer Agatha Wabara. That is a cool unit that I think has potential, and then Indigo Brother Konstantinos will go nicely in my military orders collection back there. But from a list building perspective with Bakunin, I find them gravitating towards a very different way of building lists than I'm used to, and it's a little bit scary for me. Before I jump into the lists, a little bit on Bakunin lore. There wasn't much as far as I could find. I went to my usual haunts, Human Sphere, I went to the Infinity website, and I couldn't find a heap. Basically that the Bakunin mothership is the largest of the Nomad ships. It's fairly hedonistic there. I guess that's why you've got the nuns that are trying to keep everyone in control. But it seems like a fun place to go. You may never leave, and you may come back with more or fewer appendages than you went there. You might end up with whiskers, but it seems like a cool place. Maybe crazy, a bit lawless. To me, it comes across as like the Wild West of the Human Sphere, where you've got, maybe like the Pan-Oceania planets, you've got the O12 planets that are maybe a bit more civilized. Yes, they're under attack pretty much constantly by Morats and the Combined Army, but then you've got the Nomads who have just kind of gone, do you know what? We like the idea of living in space, but we don't like the idea of society and rules. Let's go and do our own thing. So this is pretty cool. This to me is a nice blend between military orders, because there's swords and there's religion and stuff in here, and big mech suits, but there's also a little bit of that craziness without going too far, which is odd because then with my list building, I definitely gravitate towards some of those crazier units. So let's talk about list building and some of the things that I've noticed with Bakunin and some of the formations that I've started to experiment with. So there's a few lieutenant options, and often with list building, I'll look at lieutenants first, see if there's any strategos, see if there's any +1 orders, any bonuses that they can bring, counterintelligence, and Bakunin has, I was going to say a lot, it has that. It exists. And I'm coming from like military orders where they don't have, I don't think they've got any counterintelligence whatsoever. But with a Demonist Observant, you've got a lieutenant that brings in an extra order, it's got counterintelligence, it's got ECM Hacker -3, it's got martial arts, it's got guard, so it actually looks as though it could, and it's got decoy, which is very cool, which means that it's probably quite a survivable lieutenant option. The only thing for me is that I feel like it's probably an obvious lieutenant option and it's relatively expensive, so I haven't used it a lot in my lists, but it's quite cool. What I do keep gravitating towards is Cassandra Kusanagi. That's really cool, and obviously having the model really helps. And then any of the Reverend options, so the Reverend Moira or the Reverend Custodia, those are fairly good. Now, because the mimetism -6 will make them fairly hard to kill, being able to put them in a link and maybe hide them in amongst stuff that could be. However, I do think that it's likely that my Reverends will probably be the target of an attack fairly quickly. So from a lieutenant perspective, I think I'm leaning towards Cassandra because she's pretty good, specialist operative, but I don't think you can go wrong with the Moiras. Then we look at the fire team options that I've been looking at. There's one that really springs out to me, and that is the Reverend fire team, because it's one of the only core options. Well, there's the moderator fire team, which is a really cheap way to build a pure core, but I don't know that that benefits from the pure core bonuses that the Moiras or the Reverend team would, because then when you look at that core, you've got the Reverend Moiras, which have got some great profiles with some great weapon options there. The healers are obviously quite good, and then anything with medikits getting plus bursts is actually fairly useful. The Custodians are not bad at all, and then you've got the Cenobites, which I really love, and then Mother Agatha, who's a little bit expensive maybe if you just want a healer, but is a really good option elsewhere, and I'll probably get a run every so often too. So those are the two core options that I like to look at. The other option is the Riot Girl one. You can make that a pure core fairly easily, and Riot Girls definitely shouldn't be sniffed at. And I think as I start to play more of Bakunin, I'm likely to do a Riot Girl pure core at some stage to see how that rolls. But I think I just get pulled towards the mimetism -6 quite a lot. I feel like that, and in cover, because there's not a heap of, like, some factions have lots of MSV2, but what I've seen is that maybe 1 or 2 units in a list might have MSV2, some might have MSV1. So I think mimetism -6 is just so powerful that I think I'll gravitate towards those a bit more. The thing I do struggle with when I am building any Bakunin list is that you've only got access to 1 Harris, which is not uncommon. Most factions suffer, or the sectorial suffer from that, but having just come from playing Morats where you get 2 Harrises, I really feel like I want that second one here. Now the reason for that is twofold: order efficiency and attack efficiency. So one of the things that I think, one of the Harris combinations that I keep looking towards because of its similarity to Morats, is the Taskmaster and Morlock Harris. Now how I use that similarly in Morats is the Osnat FTO Gaki Praetor. They have the same rules attached to that Harris, in that the irregulars, which are the Morlocks in this case, in the Morats it's the Gakis and the Praetors, their irregulars become regular when they're in a Harris, which gives you some very cheap orders as like a cheerleader option. These are very low cost, the Morlocks, and they're actually pretty cool as well. I mean, maybe slightly cooler than Gakis and Praetors, but then I feel like the Osnat is slightly cheaper than the Taskmaster, so it kind of wins about. However, in Morats, I have the luxury of being able to take 2 Harrises, so I can take that and an attacking Harris, whereas with Bakunin, I can only take 1 Harris, and there's another Harris that I really like the look of. That is the Penitent Orphan Cenobite Observance Harris. Now the reason for that is I feel like those 3 really cover some good options. You've got the Orphan you've got the Orphan with the multi-marksman rifle and MSV2. That I think is really good at covering the range bands and obviously countering any mimetism that the opponent may have. Then you've got the Cenobite, which is a chain rifle +1 burst, which becomes +2 burst in that Harris because of that extra burst from the Harris link. And I just love the idea of rocking around with a burst 3 chain rifle when you get really close and at the pointy end of a fight. It's also got martial arts, which is pretty good. It's also got the mimetism -6, so it's going to be quite difficult to kill. So I'll probably be leading with that Reverend Cenobite. And then I love the Penitent Observant because it's got ECM Hacker -3, it's still got some mimetism. I think I'm gravitating towards the Red Fury EM Grenade Launcher +1 burst. Burst 3, thank you, in a Harris, because I just like the idea of an EM grenade launcher. There's quite a lot of heavy infantry, and well, maybe just in the lists I take, but I think in general, there's generally a heavy infantry and attack in quite a lot of lists nowadays. And I like the idea of an EM grenade launcher because EM sucks if you're heavy infantry or attack, and it would be great to have this rocking around the place. The Red Fury is good from a range band perspective, but you've also got the range bands covered by the multi-marksman rifle and the chain rifle. So that Harris is particularly attractive to me with all the extra burst that's going on there, even on the multi-marksman rifle in offense and defense. So I just really like that, and I think that could be quite difficult to get rid of. And so I really gravitate towards that, which then makes me think that maybe the pure core is more expensive than I need it to be and might not need it as much if I've got that as my main attacking piece. With the other list building options that I keep coming towards is the Chimera and the Pupniks. Now, I have been on the pointy end of this, and I did not enjoy it. The pupniks tore through my Morat Pure core, even though I had smoke down. I tried to survive and they just ripped through me. And from a points expenditure point of view, you're looking at 20 points, which is not bad at all for that. And then the 3 pupniks, which you can just throw. And then the Chimera having the Eclipse grenades makes it very easy to counter MSV, counter any ARO pieces, to still be able to push up and get up there really close. So I hate the Chimera, but I would love to have it in my list. Other 2 units that when I started to build this, so at this point I think I'm at 158 points or so, and then the last 40 points, I actually really want to try the Zeros with Mine Layer, because the Zeros look cool, they're cheap. Mine Layer and Camo and Infiltration is just a really nice like counter net, so that if someone is thinking about the same strategy as I am, with some war bands or something to run up and get in my face, that Zeros infiltration line should be really good at slowing them down. And then obviously having like the Orphan with MSV2 to pick them off as they run up, I just think that could be quite powerful. I do feel like this is maybe a little bit order light, but then with the Moiras having NCO, I can at least use the Lieutenant Order a bit more than I typically would. So I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on that sort of list. Are there other units that you gravitate towards that you think are really cool? I think one of the ones that I liked the look of was the Dimorlock Group A. Please again, like, jump in and correct me in my pronunciation. I know it's never very good, but I think that looks pretty cool as well. Those units would be horrible to have running up into someone's line and then just kind of going nuts. I really like the Stigmaton as a tag. Again, it's got good range bands. It's anti-hacking, which is very rare in a tag, so I want to be able to take that, but I feel like I might need to compromise on my pure core and maybe head towards the cheaper moderator core, or maybe the Riot Girl core, in order to be able to squeeze that in. But I think the problem with Bakunin is that there are so many things that I want to take and try that I'm going to need all of the models. I'm going to need at least double the amount of games I'm currently getting so that I can try it all and see what works and doesn't work. What are your thoughts on Bakunin? Have you got the set? Have you got them knowing how Bakunin play and you really want to lean into them? Did you get them because they just look cool and you want to find out everything later? Do you play Bakunin and you can give some advice to a new Bakunin player on combinations and things that they should try? Do you know of the strengths and weaknesses of Bakunin and you're happy to share them for new players, and obviously myself, who is a new Bakunin player? I'm really keen to hear your thoughts, so please jump in the comments. I do read every single one that's in there, and I know a lot of the other viewers do as well, to try and get some advice from more experienced players. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll be back soon with another one. They don't gravitate well towards... You can tell I'm talking about Bakunin, and he thinks his furry face and pointy ears is on track here. 2, obviously, but you've ruined this video.